does get real once we're recording.
Yeah.
So like
Game's on.
you got to shake off the cobwebs of what 5 months of not doing this. Like kind of, I wouldn't say drop the ball, but definitely like just overwhelmed with all the other things that has prevented us from getting together for this. But here we are. It is the summer podcast for the NC NICA League. I am Sean Moore. I am the Associate League Director in charge of coach and team development. With me today is Brian Russell, League Director for the North Carolina Interscholastic Cycling League, and Shell Frost, Associate League Director in charge of programs. I think, did I get everybody's title right?
You got our titles right. You didn't tell anyone what I do, and I know everyone's still scratching their heads. I'm like, what really does Brian do around here? Anyway, like he can't
No,
even get a podcast for 6 months. Like, way to go, Russell.
I think that's pretty unfair. And so, like, Shell and I both got to experience being Brian Russell for a week. And I would say there's a lot of balls that are being juggled kind of leading into the event. And then the weekend of the event, it was all like portray an outward facade of calm and yet feel a sense of stress and tension kind of throughout the weekend, trying to make sure everything kind of came off to the best of your ability. Would you put that, Shell? Would you say that's a fair assumption, fair like synopsis of that role?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
And you didn't have to experience the like sudden downpour evacuation of the trail. Like
I got to deal with the disaster in advance of the event.
Yeah, I got all
better
on
than
like Saturday. Yeah. So we each got to experience like the like, oh my gosh, everything's falling apart moment. Like, and it's all my fault. It's all on me to take care of it. So yeah. But anyway, so here we are. It is July. As you said, Brian, it is Kathy Russell, your wife and coach supporter, her birthday today, and you are able to join us because she is not yet home to participate in any birthday person activities. So we get you until that point. So excellent. So what's up?
It's the classic space between, right, Sean and Shell. So it's like, take a look at what we did, how did we do, and then what do we want to consider, take on board, get rid of as we embark on this next season. 10 years, guys. 10 years. We're going into the 10th season for this thing. That's pretty cool to be a part of a league that's this mature, has come this far. But as any organization, I think you really take a hard look at everything you've done up to this point, and like, how do we make it better? And that's the point we're at. I know we're going to talk a little bit about that in this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things to mention, like kind of right after the season ended, we were gearing up to go out to Trek in Waterloo, Wisconsin for the League Directors Summit, which was all the league directors from all the leagues kind of coming together. There were a few that weren't able to make it. But it was my first time there. Shell, was it your first time as well? And so I think that was like a huge experience to kind of get ideas from other leagues and also share some of the things that we're doing that are so awesome in our league. And I think that was great. And thanks to John Burke and Trek for hosting us. That was super cool to be there. And John Burke graciously like opened his house up to us, Wednesday evening to kind of get things kicked off. And that was pretty cool. It's interesting to be around someone who is, in charge of such a large bike company, one of the largest in the world, definitely, I think the largest in the United States. And just like, he's just a kind of a regular guy. Like he's not intimidating to be around or anything like that. So that was pretty cool. But thanks to NICA and to Trek for hosting us for that. But what were some of the things that kind of coming out of that and the things that we've been talking about? I think one of the big things that was interesting for me was how NICA nationally is really looking at how do we grow as an organization and how do leagues grow. And one of the big things that we talked about was conferences. And so I think that's the kind of the first thing we want to sort of talk about here as we're in summer mode and looking forward to next season. Where are we at with conferences, sort of what's going on, and maybe a preview of what that's going to look like for the 2026 season. So Brian, I'll let you start kind of with what your vision for conferences is.
As I typically do, and both of you are going to roll your eyes. So anyone watching this on YouTube is going to go, "Oh, here goes Brian again." He's going to backtrack, and then he's going to get to what Sean actually asked. But that's what you get. That's who you brought on board here. I think part of my backtrack again is the point I made. If you look at how you've done and what you've been doing and what is successful and what's successful. So we took a hard look at season 9 based on all the inputs we got on season 9, but we matched that with the things we've seen in those previous seasons. And one is growth. This league is essentially stagnant. It is 800 and 900 kids for the past 3 to 4 seasons, and you start scratching your head. Why? Because the feedback, thank you to everyone who participated in the end of season survey. I will link that either by the end of the week or next week onto our website so everyone can see the results. But all the results are fantastic, really, by and large, from the parents, the kids, and the coaches who participated. They're all saying essentially, parents, my kid is doing very well, confidence and school performance and mental, those are all good. Kids think they're well supported at the practice and they're having fun at the events. Coaches think they're well trained and they're getting the support they need. Like everything is marked pretty much in the strongly agree or agree column for all those categories. There are certainly places we can improve on what we're doing, but by and large, we're doing really, really well. So you ask yourself, like, why aren't more people coming to this thing that appears to be really, really popular? But again, thanks for everyone for filling out the surveys, and it helps us kind of focus on where we need to be. So there are many things a league can do to support growth. One is the idea of conferences, and there are upwards of 10 other NICA leagues that have gone down that road of expanding geographically to reach more people. And the idea behind conferences, Sean, is get closer to people, get closer, bring our events, bring that magic closer to people in North Carolina so they're not traveling 4 or more hours to get to and from the events and having to spend a lot of money to do that. That comes out in the survey. I mentioned coaches and parents specifically. 50% of coaches travel costs are too high. Parents, 50% think they're traveling too far to get to the things we do. So it is a bid to grow the league by bringing things closer to the people. And I think we will see some growth out of that because I'm probably talking to the parents, and I've been one of them. Man, podiums, 5 o'clock on a Sunday, 4-hour drive home. Ooh, that's a late day. And that's, you got kids in school in the morning, you're going to work. So I think we're trying to find a better kind of 2-hour, 3-hour window, reduce that time. So that's one of the major reasons we're doing it. I'll just close and let Michelle, Sean, you can comment on it. Is just how we do conferences next season. We're still figuring that out. And thank you very much to Nick Morozko. He's one of the NICA, North Carolina NICA board members, who's leading a committee that's deciding or making recommendations anyway to me, like who's in what conference, who gets to participate in what things. And so by October, when we open next season, we'll have those details for folks and let people know, hey, this is what the conference structure is going to look like. But it's a growth step, and that's in the NICA expansion playbook for leagues. That's what, we all three were in that session at the NICA conference, hearing from all those other state leagues that either had done it or are doing it. It is kind of the next big step for a league of our maturity to do. And so that's the idea with conferences.
I think for me, the first time I encountered John Burke at a NICA summit was way back in, I think, 2019 in Arkansas, and at that time he shared this vision of 200,000 student athletes in NICA nationally. And this time he started presenting this thing he calls the, what is it, the 628 problem. And that is that if every league in the country that currently exists had the same level of participation as Utah does, which is the largest league in the NICA national umbrella, we would have 628,000 student athletes. And it's just like, wow, we haven't even gotten to 200,000 yet. Now we're already like at 628,000. But the idea just is that this idea of um, really taking to heart, I think, our mandate, which is getting more kids on bikes. And I think one of the real things that I want to sort of bring more attention to with teams and coaches is just that idea of not just getting the kids that are already on mountain bikes, but like, how do we get this to where we're starting to reach people that aren't involved in our sport at all and sort of recruiting those families and those kids and getting them involved? And I think that's long term, that's really where our big growth is going to come from.
I think of something that a lot of people don't necessarily see at our events, but we see in the background is that when we look at the number of registrants for our league overall being stagnant, we've also been stagnant for several seasons in the number of participants in events. And I think maybe we're sitting around maybe 45% participation in our league events. And something that I've seen is we'll have kids that come to our preseason events who are really excited to be there. And then when you talk to them, they're like, I don't know if I'll make it to any of the events during the season because they're really far away. Or it's really hard for families who maybe have multiple kids doing different sports for their family to be in two different places on weekends because there's just too far away. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And I'm really excited to see what the committee can come up with ideas of how to expand. Because we've got some coaches, some student athletes. Nick's got really good perspective, and I know that they'll all kind of keep the things that they love most about our community and our events in the forefront when making those decisions, and be creative about how we can continue to highlight those in our events as we expand into conferences. So I'm excited because I know they bring a lot of different perspectives to the table that we wouldn't necessarily always see or be our first thought. So it's good to have folks engaged like that to help us come up with the best solutions as we transition into that.
Brian, is there anything you care to add on this idea of conferences and where we're going? Or do you feel that, you know, at this point, it seems that we are definitely moving to conferences, an Eastern and a Western conference. And it's this committee that is really taking a deeper dive into what exactly that's going to look like, who's going to be in what conference, what participation in all the events is going to look like, and that sort of thing. Is that a fair sort of synopsis of where we're at this point?
It's a great synopsis, and I'll tell you everyone one thing that conferences is not. It's not dividing the league in half. It is not a North Carolina West League and a North Carolina East League. I've heard that, but no, it's one league. There will still be opportunities to participate together in those things. Think about like a true championship, bringing East and West together to kind of race off for a championship. So it is not cutting the state in half and two separate NICA leagues, and it is still one league to manage, just like you said, Sean, the culture and the shell. You mentioned that, the good things, everything we just heard in that season 9 survey, do the right things. We want to sustain that across the state. And then I'll just one quick nod and another shout out to Trek, who really, puts their money where their mouth is in some sense. I just actually walked Nick through their market share analysis of North Carolina. That Trek projects, we have a 3,000 kid potential in this state based on the number of eligible, even just high school student athletes. And they assume we can get about 2% of that eligible population to get on bikes. And when you look across county by county like they've done, we are very undersold. And even some of our largest counties, Wake County, Mecklenburg County, way undersold in terms of the eligible kids that could be doing this thing. So again, scratching our heads, I know at the league level, just like Shell said, only 500 out of those 900 are coming every weekend. What can we do to encourage them to experience the full NICA participation that we want them to experience? And conferences is that next step, validated by NICA, validated by all the other leagues that have done it. Thank you to Nick and the committee members to just figure out how we're going to do it.
All right. Another thing that has kind of allowed us to expand a little bit was last year being a part of the fifth grade inclusion pilot program. We started to allow fifth graders to participate in NICA. They were able to come and race. They had a state championship. They did not have a series. So that lessened that pressure to come to every race kind of thing. So it was really more about just getting those student athletes into teams so that teams could see what it was like having fifth graders and that sort of thing. And that kind of reaches us down into another segment of eligible student athletes. And I think you are kind of thinking along those lines about this pilot program, Brian, and I want to hear your ideas about where this is headed.
I'm going to back up one more step. This is like, we'll just retitle the podcast. Russell taking 2 steps backward before he gets to the question. Just thanks again to all the teams that did participate in the fifth grade pilot program. And we also asked them for their feedback end of the season. It was overwhelmingly positive. And, the sentiment is generally that fifth graders look a lot like sixth graders, and it was okay. And so just to announce to everyone that fifth grade will be a category next season for season 10. Like, it will just be an available category, no pilot program. It'll just be available based on your feedback. But that's also what NICA saw across all the other pilot leagues at fifth grade. Like, it's doable.
Well, I'm gonna interject right there. So you said that fifth graders are a lot like sixth graders. So I don't know. All of us have kids that are about the same age. So my son just completed his first year of college. It's been a minute since I've been around a fifth grader, but there were little kids ripping around the kind of venue area with number plates on, and I was just like, is that a third? Like, how old is that kid? Like, they look so small, and and then watching them race, it like really brought me back to when my son started, and I just forgot how small a fifth grader is. How about you all?
Made me think of when Maddie got started, and she was in fifth grade when Cole started NICA, and her first mountain bike, your son Owen had to help Maddie get on the bike and get it rolling because she couldn't reach the ground. And that was about the size that all of them were.
Yep. All right, Brian. Sorry to steal your thunder.
No, there's no thunder stolen. And for those watching on YouTube, you can see the thunder clouds literally behind me at North Topsail Island Beach. But elementary pilot program, NICA is going down that road. They are evaluating curriculum and models for getting to the first to fifth grade. That there will be some overlap maybe in fifth grade. NICA is still figuring that out. I have put my hand in the air to Amanda Carey, the NICA president, saying we, North Carolina, want to be involved in that pilot program. And we are developing a model here to implement. We've got Diane LeBlanc, who a lot of people I think know as our registration manager, helping us put that together. Something akin to some quasi association at the team level for the youngins to do age appropriate activities and risk mitigated, and maybe even something at the league level. You come to an event, the littles have something to do. And you both know, and folks that were at Danville for the championship know, we tried a family and friends ride. If mom or dad wasn't a registered coach, kids not of NICA age, hey, let's get them around the race course. And by and large, that went okay. Some I think found out, ooh, Danville's one heck of a course, but it went okay. So I think that's the idea. How do we pilot that in our 10th season to enable the littles to experience some of the NICA magic, so to speak, and kind of set them on a good path when they are of NICA age, to be a pretty quick participant coming in teams. I've seen it informally around this league. It's quite the feeder to the team. Those kids are all waiting in the wings, waiting for their turn. And we see them at all our events. We're like, when do I get my turn? And so it's a way to more formalize, capture that energy and direct it in a pretty positive manner, culture wise, skills wise, that's the idea. So more to follow on that for sure. But if there's any team director, head coach out there interested in being part of that pilot program, reach out to me, Sean, or Shell, and just say, hey, kind of interested, and we'll put you on the interest list as we figure it out.
And I know, Shell, you've had a lot of interaction with the littles, as Brian called them. But what's been your experience at league events with kind of this lower age group, these early elementary school kids?
There's two things that come to mind right off the bat about the littles. Is that every event for the past several seasons, I call them a little following of littles that they know the parameters in which they can participate, and they're so good at listening because they're just so eager to be part of it, and they're there anyways. They're watching their older siblings. They are engaged with their team in the pit zone, and they kind of figure out and feel out what the rules are for, like, when they can come grab a snack, or if they can come color or do these little things. So, and they'll ride their bikes around the outskirts. So I'm excited about the possibility of having some ways that they can engage on their bikes as well, because they are really fun, and they're really well behaved. They just really want to be part of it, and they're excited about it. So I'm excited to get to bring them in a little bit more, and hopefully build that excitement to be part of NICA when they get to like fifth grade. But something that I saw last season at the preseason grid event, I did a lot of reading about the confidence gap over the past probably 5 or 6 years, and how it pertains to grit and female participation. So I kind of anticipated seeing this, but not quite so clearly as I did immediately when the fifth graders arrived at the grit preseason event. And something that was really cool to me is they are very similar to the sixth graders, but the biggest difference I saw between the fifth and sixth graders at preseason events was the sixth graders. It was like someone gave them a book about the confidence gap before they came and told them how to act, because it's exactly as it's described. It was the sixth graders were excited, but they were a little more kind of withdrawn at first. They weren't real confident jumping right in with other people, or they wanted mom or dad to hang out around the outskirts, and not leave them there. The fifth graders, when they got there, they just wanted to jump right into everything. And they didn't want to be like, oh, I'll try it out with this group of fifth and sixth graders. They were like, no, let me at these high schoolers. And we had to kind of rein them in. But their excitement was awesome. And I'm really excited to see how that continues to unfold down the road. I know that when middle schoolers get to high school, a lot of them have already been participating in a certain sport for so many years. Then they get more specialized in that sport and they get to high school, and we tend to lose a lot of people. So I'm very interested to see if we're getting them engaged in fifth grade or lower than that, if that becomes something that, because they've been exposed to it at an earlier age, that they're more likely to stick with mountain biking, and have more confidence in being willing to try something new. Or sometimes mountain biking involves a lot of failing. So the fifth graders are not fazed by that. So getting those littles engaged and part of that culture and community within our league is exciting to me, because I think that we may see down the road that has a really big impact on how many of these kids we are retaining into high school.
Yeah, I think, for me, thinking back to when the league first started and I started a team, my son was in fifth grade, and he actually begged my wife and I to not start a team that first year and wait until he was in sixth grade and was eligible. And to me, it's like this idea of kind of expanding down gives a whole other range of parents who maybe aren't already involved in that, train of, taking this kid here and this kid there. Like, you hear these schedules that some of these families have of older kids where they're kind of, it's just work after work. You're kind of just taking everybody to their practices and picking them up and getting them all everywhere. And now it's like at the elementary school level, some of those pressures go away, and it's more just like you get to kind of just be with your kid and ride. And maybe that's a way of like recruiting that family. We talk about recruiting student athletes, but really we want to recruit those families, get those coaches involved, and get everybody sort of like have some longevity in the team and in the league itself.
Well, they can still keep up with their kids.
Yes, they can still keep up with their kids. Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, that sort of, I guess, kind of gives us another little segue into something we've been working on actually for over a year. I think we first talked about it at the NICA National Summit in Fayetteville, Arkansas last summer. And we haven't got it fully fleshed out, but we want to talk a little bit about it and sort of let you know where we're what we're thinking about and what we're trying to accomplish. And first off, I'm going to go ahead and apologize right off the bat for the current name that we have for this program because it's terrible. But we can't seem to come up with anything better, and AI has only come up with worse things than this. But we promise that we will have a better name for this. But we call it core competencies. So core competencies is this idea that we want to, this came about in a conversation with actually Brian Wood, who is, as you all know, our chief course marshal, and part of his background is in scouting. And we were having this conversation at dinner at the national summit, and the question I asked was, "What's the average amount of time that a boy spends in Boy Scouts?" But this kind of goes for scouting in general. And he said that it was about 3 years. And so I know from my experience as a Boy Scout way back when, it was about 3 years. I did not become an Eagle Scout. Very few Boy Scouts actually become Eagle Scouts. So it's this idea that the Boy Scouts sort of understand average time is about 3 years. What are the things that we want to have a participant who's with us the average amount of time to be able to walk away from our organization and have those skills that they can take forward for the rest of their lives? And so I think about the things I learned in Boy Scouts, knots and how to make a campfire, like things that I actually still kind of do on a daily basis. And we started talking about, well, what would be the things that we would want the average participant who spends 3 years in our league to be able to walk away and have as these sort of core competencies? Is that a fair assessment? Do either of you want to add anything to that?
I think the only thing I would add, and I'm not going to backtrack, but I kind of am. Uh, so it gets to at least the North Carolina way of doing business in NICA, and which has been adopted by a lot of folks at NICA National, that idea of programs fusion. We are building lifelong mountain bikers. We want our mountain bikers to be full spectrum mountain bike athletes. And what does that mean? That means, okay, I have the skills to race if I want to. I have the skills to go on rides with my friends if I want to. I have the skills and knowledge of trail advocacy, and I can go work on some trails. I want to, teach the kids all those things along their path. And we've done, and thanks to Shell, who does great work on, everything she does, we've got a lot of those elements in that thing called Adventure Passport we've done for 2 seasons. But my view is like they're trapped in Adventure Passport. And never again do I want to hear in this league a coach say, "Oh, that's an adventure kid," or "That's a racer." Like, no, they're a mountain biker, and there are things that individual can do, challenge by choice, what they want to do. And so I think that's my way of viewing it, Sean, is just we want to formalize this program of different things you can do while mountain biking into this program that then coaches can program throughout their whole season, kids can do throughout the whole season, in terms of achieving the goals they want to do on their bike. And so I think that's what we're packaging up here. Get it out of just the adventure program. It's for all the riders. It's for all the teams to be a part of.
Exactly. And one of the things we're working on is a way to make this a lot easier to keep track of. And so we've kind of seen some things that we really like and that we think are going to move forward with that we'll talk more about at and this is a shameless plug at the league summit, which will be in October. So this will be sort of the first view that coaches get for a lot of the things that we're sort of hinting at right now. We will have much more fleshed out and presented so that everyone sort of understands where we're going this season. Shel, was there anything you wanted to add about core competencies?
I'm excited about the idea of there being kind of different levels of competency they can build in each area. So rather than sticking to just that adventure passport, like Brian said, expanding it. So like a new student athlete might be just learning about the existence of some of these things, while some of our older, more experienced riders might be really emerging as leaders in that area or finding they're really passionate about that particular thing. So it's exciting to me that they can do a lot more with this idea than with just that adventure passport. And I like the idea that like Brian mentioned, of there's not adventure riders or racers. There's kids that do all of those things that absolutely love it, and the more they do, the more they like riding their bikes overall. And that's our goal, is for them to be building these skills and this love of cycling that they're going to carry on with them for the rest of their lives, even if they're not in NICA beyond 3 seasons.
100%. All right. And then kind of the other thing that we wanted to talk about, and just to set the stage, I've been kind of putting together the league specific part of the handbook revision, and then going through the new draft of the 2026 NICA handbook. And there's a lot that's changed. It's like there's some really great changes that I've seen in the national handbook. And then we're able to put in a lot more of our specific stuff so that you won't have to look through an appendix. You won't read a rule and then like there's an exception to the rule and you got to look at the appendix. You'll just see a handbook that is the North Carolina NICA handbook, and it will have everything in there. And it will be really straightforward and easy for everyone to see. There's a lot of specific language about conferences and how scoring is done and how call-ups are done at combined events. So a lot of I think the things that you might think would be stuff that hasn't been thought of has already kind of been thought of. And then there are specific things that I'm putting together for the league that's really going off of what we've been doing and kind of where we're headed. And one of the big highlights in language that I really think is fantastic is when it comes to the expansion of composite teams to school teams. And notice I'm leaving off the word based. And so there's a lot of different flavors of how this works, but there is specific language in there that is no longer about, what it means to kind of be a school-based team, and then saying, you don't have to get permission. You still don't have to get permission. That's still in there, but there is this new language, and it's called a school-aligned team. And here's the basic way to think about this. So here in Caldwell County, we have a high school. It is High Brighton High School. If High Brighton High School, which is the Panthers, and their colors are red and black. If I start a school aligned team, it's the High Brighton team. and it has a panther, not the same panther, but it has a panther as the mascot, and it has the colors red and black. And that's the team. It represents all of the kids that go to that school without it being specific to the school as far as in the name. And so this idea of like, well, we're not going to be able to get into the school, we don't need to. And I really want to dispel that as a reason to not go to a school aligned team. One of the things that you start to see is that whenever you expand and are able to have the school aligned team as part of your expansion, then that team is able to expand and you are able to expand in other areas. And it's all about this idea of growth. And one of the big things that I think we need to start thinking about, especially with our large composite teams, is that your head coach role, if you are the head coach of a very large team that is expanding and expanding into school aligned teams or expanding into subdivided area specific composite teams, I'm thinking of some place where, you know, there are large metropolitan areas that can then be represented as a composite team on its own, then you're no longer really a head coach. You're more like an executive kind of coach. And you've got some head coaches underneath you with these expanded teams that now you're sort of helping them manage the expansion of their team entity. So there's a lot of this that is going to still be somewhat I think kind of transitory as we move to Pit Zone 2.0, which if you're playing NICA bingo and you hear Pit Zone 2.0 come up, that is one of the things that you can mark off your bingo card. We did that at NICA National. We got an update about Pit Zone 2.0. Head coaches and team directors, you will see that Pit Zone looks a little different now. And that is Pit Zone 2.0, or actually Pit Zone 1.9. I think. So there's some changes coming that are going to help us to really help you see this expansion and how it looks for you as your team grows and you expand in your area. And we sort of start to reach those market potentials for all of our areas. Anything that kind of you want to add to that, Brian or Shell?
Something that Utah was talking about at the league directors conference that really struck me. They were talking about some of their teams growing to the point beyond where those head coaches were able to maintain a relationship with each student athlete on their team, where it really felt like they were a head coach that really knew each individual well, and that those individuals knew them well, and that they could serve as like a mentor and leader to each individual. And I know that all of our head coaches really care a lot. They're really invested in their student athletes and teams, but thinking of it as like delegating those other head coaches and letting them fill that role so it's a more meaningful role, and more meaningful interactions for the families and student athletes on those teams is, I think, what everybody wants everyone to have that experience, and to have that support on your team, is a positive, to not see it as a negative or breaking up what it originally was. If you've grown a team to that size, that's amazing. That's great. That's something to be proud of. And being able to maintain that level of leadership in a meaningful way, so that it continues to be such a good experience for people, is really important.
And I think a big point to that is that we don't have any team that is as large as its projected potential. And so the whole idea behind this is our biggest teams still have so much room to expand. And so we've got to sort of start to really put together these ideas of how we expand. But we've got to still maintain those meaningful relationships with student athletes. I think you're right on point with that, Shell. And I think I was sitting in that same session, and it was the head coach from, like, it was a team of 200 at one point in Utah, and they were a composite team. And he talked about it was really hard for him to even remember everyone's name. let alone have any kind of like meaningful coaching relationship with them. And that when they expanded into these different subdivided teams, that allowed for all the student athletes to have a better experience because they then were able to have a more meaningful relationship with the head coach of that team. And I thought that was really powerful, and it does speak to like the idea of like how growth represents a lot of problems and how we can kind of preempt those problems if we think forward far enough. Ryan, anything you wanted to add to that?
So great job, Sean, giving everyone an overview of what is essentially the league's growth strategy that I briefed our board on this previous week. It's essentially like two prongs of strategy. It's grow, expand geographically, league level, conferences, micro level, teams finding the champion in that new area to create that, platform for a kid to come in, expanding demographically. A kid that wants to do something with mountain biking, and we've got that program's fusion opportunity, core competencies for them to do that, and go elementary age level to introduce them at the earliest point possible to this thing we do. So, job well done. We're looking for everyone to get on board with the strategy, be a part of that winning solution. That's how we become a Utah with 6,000 kids, is expanding geographically and expanding demographically in the state of North Carolina. And proud to be a part of it. Season 10 is going to be awesome.
Season 10 is going to be awesome. All right, so we've got some important dates. So coach training, we still have lots of open seats for, let's see, all 4 of our WFA OTBS 101 course weekends have open seats. And we have one WFA CPR course, the October 11th date. That one is sold out for just the WFA CPR, but all the others still have some room in them, except for actually, I think the 2 RDUs are currently sold out. So AVL, those 2 weekends on 9/27/28 and 10/25/26, those 2 dates still have open seats in both WFA CPR and OTBS 101, as well as the 2 RDU dates have open seats for the combined WFA CPR OTBS 101. It's the WFA CPR only that is sold out for those. We unfortunately did have to cancel the Camp Greer all-female training weekend, and that was just due to lack of sign up. We did not have anyone who registered for the WFA CPR OTBS 101 course for that weekend, and we had not very many that signed up for the WFA CPR, and so we had to make the unfortunate decision to cancel that. That's a lesson kind of learned for us. It might have been just a little too early in the summer, and we'll have to figure out a maybe better way of doing that. Then some other upcoming dates for preseason. Well, let me back up. So registration, pit zone for coaches and teams is going to open up on the 2nd of September. And then the 1st of October is when student athletes will be able to start registering for the season. Then preseason will open up on October 15th. Remember, you're allowed to have 6 team level preseason events with prior approval from the league director. We will be putting out all of those forms and information for everyone. We still need every team to submit its team application so that we can see what schools that you are covering and that sort of thing. And then the league summit is going to be October 18th and 19th. Brian, do you want to share the location of that?
Yeah, League Summit, we're going back to Camp Greer in Old Fort, North Carolina. They treat us very, very well for our coach retreat back in January of this year. If everyone remembers, we had to postpone that quite a bit because of Hurricane Helene. But it's a great location, super affordable lodging options. They feed us really, really well. Some of the best food I've had, honestly, in that from that cafeteria there, and then access to some wonderful trail systems. And why League Summit Vice Coach Retreat? It is really focused on everything we talked about in this podcast, league strategy and how to be a part of that league strategy, expanding geographically and expanding demographically. How can you be a part of that, getting more kids on bikes in North Carolina? So that's League Summit, 18-19 October. Sean, I think you and I might work on the registration this month and get that open now that we kind of know the parameters of that so folks can start signing up.
Correct. And just a caveat on that. So League Summit does provide CEUs, which are necessary for level 2 and level 3 coaches. There's a certain number of CEUs you have to have every 2 years. And then it does not provide the Leaders Summit credits that are required for moving from level 2 to level 3. That is a separate thing done by NICA as Zoom meetings, and we will provide links to those. You can find them on the coach training portion of the NICA national website. And then moving from there, on the 26th of October, we will have a grit preseason event. Shell, you want to tell us about that?
We're looking to do that at Sherman Branch, which will make Leonard Van Hoos's heart happy. That's his home trail, his baby, that I hear is in amazing condition and the most fun it's ever been by everyone I talk to in Charlotte, in part due to NICA student athletes and Teen Trail Corps. So excited to go check that out and ride there. Hopefully that's a more central location that we can get a lot of new female student athletes out there to kind of learn about grit in the league and get them excited about the season.
And then we have just a event one sometime in November. All of that's to be decided. Do you have any information on that one, Shell?
Date for that is 1 November. That's pretty solid. Still looking for a location to dial that in, looking for something kind of central to the state, because on 22 November for our second preseason event, we'll be back at Camp Greer in Old Fort. We'll bring the kids this time and they get to go ride all those fantastic trails out there. Thanks again to Camp Greer for hosting us, and just for all of those preseason events available to all registered athletes in the state. Grit, obviously female registered athletes, but come see your friends from across the state and in the preseason events and make some new ones for the season.
And that brings me to a new little updated rule for call-up procedures for the first and second race. So call-up procedures for race number 1 are based on the overall series points that a student athlete earned in the prior season. Any student athlete that was not a part of the league the prior season, it then goes by the order of their bib number, which is assigned whenever they register. So it's based on registration order. So kind of the sooner you get registered, then the sooner you get your bib number kind of thing. So it will be kind of like to everyone's advantage to register early if they can. But just so that everyone's aware of that. And then race number 2, it's based on the standings from the first race. And if someone didn't race the first race, then it goes to the bib number order or plate number order for their number 4 lineup for call-ups. So just so everyone's aware of that, because that's a new little wrinkle to the rules. And then after that, we have the Eastern Regionals on November 8, 9, and that is going to be again in Maryland. Am I correct in that?
Maryland, my very first NICA event when I was part of the Maryland League is at Fairhill, so special place in my heart, Fairhill, Maryland. Place is immense. It's incredible. Couple details on that. Registration for that will open 25 August, and different from last year, there is no qualifying for the race. The race is only for high school student athletes. But if you want to go, register for the race. Last season, it was like top 20% from each league, and it was restricted. But it's just, if you want to come race, sign up. It is first come, first serve. They think they've got room for everyone that might be interested, but there is probably some incentive to register if you want to go race at regionals. For our athletes, because we're a spring league, you will be racing in your 2026 category. So the CPT, thank you, Jim Otto, does wonderful work calculating our category placement table for the following season. That is done. I'll give it another review here the next week. That'll be on the website. So those athletes that want to go race regionals, register in your 2026 category, and you will be all set for that. And oh, by the way, North Carolina for the second year in a row is hosting the Teen Trail Corps activation at Eastern Regionals because of our recognized excellence in that category. Another 4,000 plus hours this past season. If you were at Danville, all the team awards and kid awards, and it was fantastic. Our folks are doing really, really good job taking care of the trails. And I'll just say one more thing about that. Yet again, as I'm talking to a venue owner in the western part of this state about the impact this league makes, I brought up Teen Trail Corps and the fact that we'll take care of that place, and you probably even get some trail work out of us to help prepare that course, or we'll do it while we're there. And that really caught their attention. So it is valuable, this idea of programs fusion, and that all the programs we do are important to getting kids on bikes in North Carolina.
All right. Well, it felt like we had a lot to talk about. Do you guys think we've kind of talked ourselves out?
Well, thank goodness part of the end of season survey feedback was that the league communicates fairly well. So obviously skipping the podcast for 6 months wasn't too much of a loss. I mean, I enjoyed talking with you and Shell, Sean. So I mean, great, good for us. But I think everyone recalls, once you get in the season, coach call, town hall, emails, iterable, team snap updates. Like, okay, we're communicating. Yeah, it was probably time to like level set on what the heck is going on around this place.
Yes, exactly. Oh, all right. So that brings us to Bill Stevens' favorite part of the podcast. Shell, you got your dad joke? I
I
know
do.
Brian's got his dad joke.
I think it's the only second time I've ever come prepared. Uh, so, what is blue and not very heavy?
I have no idea.
Light blue.
Good one. I thought you were going to go with the despicable the air. I can't touch the air. I was going to go with, I think, a birthday one just in honor of Kathy's birthday again today. What what did the teddy bear say when it was offered some birthday cake?
I don't know.
No thanks, I'm stuffed.
All right.
Bill, if you're still listening, that's two dad jokes. One more, Sean.
So this is in honor of you, Brian, and all the other Marines and former Marines that are a part of our league. Where do crayons go for vacation?
Well, I knew crayons were going to be part of it, but I don't know where they go.
Colorado.
Yes. Excellent.
Okay. On that note, I think we can say goodbye.
You're like school in the summertime, no class. That's an old Fat Albert joke. Which, by the way, I think our season theme is going to be decades for season 10. 10 decades. So kicking it back to like late 70s, early 80s with the Fat Albert reference.
Have you decided what decades we're gonna have a part of?
No, maybe we'll pull that out to folks and pick your decades.
Go way
So
back and have a penny farthing race.
so I was talking with my colleagues at school, and this fact like kind of blows me away. So our students now in high school are as close to the 80s when I'm Gen X. So a lot of my colleagues are Gen X. So our high school students are as close to the 80s as we were in high school to the 40s. So it's the same period of time. So you think about like how old movies looked from the 40s whenever you were in high school, and now think about our high school students these days and how old movies must look from the 80s. So it's very disconcerting to think about those time spans. So decades may be more frightening to some of us than others. All right. Well, goodbye, everybody. Thanks if you made it this far. Sorry.
And hope to talk to you again sooner than 6 months from now. So we'll see how.
Exactly. All right. Goodbye, everybody.